to apply the transparency. Okay, so this one we can just keep it at the 0 itself. All right, but then we can even specify its direction. Is it to right, and then put a comma, and that will specify its opacity. If we have reduced opacity here by 0.3, let's increase it a little to, let's say, 0.7. all right, then we can bring this one to also down as well, 0. Let's say 4, 0.4. okay, so the first one, the second and the third one are the actual RGB values, and then the fourth digit represents the opacity level. And then this the same thing for this one too, for the second color selection. So we have the first, second, third. These are the RGB values, the red, the green, and the blue. But the next figure that we attach by ourselves is actually the one that specifies the deepness of that particular color. So I have to re-explain this very well in a nice way for it to be understood clearly. And with this one, 0.4, we can make it, let's say 0. Let's say 30. So what about the 0. Let's say 9? All right, that makes it even becomes more darker. So we can stop some at 0.6 or 0.7. okay, 0.8 here. All right, so that is how we can make an image to fade down. But then there is something I did that I did not explain very well for clear understanding. So let's see. With the background image, so after we specify the background image itself appears. But then we want to make it fade down, or for it to go down in color, or we want to place a color on top of it so that the image itself blends to the background or face down. For that reason, we will say linear gradient dash gradient. So once you just highlight it, you can just click on the enter key. And also, before you continue, just make sure that you specify a comma before the image itself comes. So when you specify the linear gradient, you are expected to put in RGBA colors. It should be 2 or sometimes even more. But if you're not so sure of the RGBA colors, you can do like something like hash FFF to pick a white color, hash, or okay, let's say hash 000 to pick a black color, another hash 000 to pick another black color. But then you like to change them to RGB colors. So this first one represents a color probably at the left side, and the next hash color represents the color that will be probably at the right hand side. Sometimes you should I've placed something like to bottom, to right, to left. That one specifies which direction the color is going to flow to. From black, let's say, to red. Let's make this one a red color over here. So let's Ctrl plus S, go to C. So by default, it moves from the bottom to top. All right, but then we want to make it move probably entirely black. Then we are putting a black, an entire of a black color overlay on top of the image. And refresh. But then we can specify that to right. All right. To right. The color code is blending with the text itself. So is that to right? Plus S. We have a comma here, and that will show the gradient moving to the right side. But then let's change this to RGBA values. RGBA. So when we hover the mouse pointer on top of the color selector, it brings out that color selection dialog box. Then we click on those values and they keep changing. So we want the RGBA itself, RGBA. Alright, then the same way for this one too. We click to change it to RGBA. 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 I see RGB. Okay. And then we can make this, we can add an A, but then once we add the RGBA, we have to add comma 0. The A stands for alpha. Okay. It's a red, green, blue, and A means alpha. That controls the deepness of that color. And they are corresponding to their, so the R here, the 0 here is for the R, that's the red, the amount of redness. Then the 0 is for the green, another 0 for the blue, the next one which is alpha for the A that we are seeing here. And the alpha, which is actually this digit, the one that is going to control the deepness of the color. So everything being 0 means no color. That's why it's going to leave the background to become darkened. Yeah. Let me say Control plus S and then let's see. It should affect making it a darkened background. Alright. Let me see, changing this to 50%. Is now beginning to add an opacity of 50. What about 0.9? That's what in decimals and also to whole numbers. Alright, so this is also increasing the color appearing. So rather than the alpha, which is what the opacity is, we're currently at 0. When we increase to 0.9, that means we're increasing it. When you make it an actual value of 1, that is completely 100%. So the same way we can also alter this one. We can make it a value of 1, and then to reduce it, then we step backwards to 0. Can go to 0.7 to reduce its effect. And also you can do the same thing for this particular RGBA part here. This part of RGBA, we have to also reduce it down to 0.7 as well. Then we see that it all reduces simultaneously. Someone can go down to 0.5. Someone can also go down to 0.5 here. Alright. But then I want the color to show very well. So I can go to somewhere like 0.9 and then 0.9 here. Oh, that is going to apply it too much. Okay, 0.75 and then 0.75 here. Okay, but then remember that we have some text here that I would like to bring to the center. Alright, so by doing this, we've seen how to apply a background image using the URL value. And after the URL, we specify the path of the image. If there is no folder, just key in the image name. And if there is a folder, you specify the folder, then followed by the image name. And that will make the image appear. But then we want to control the amount of what? Ambience, whether the image or the image becomes deeper or fainted. Then we have to convert it to the RGBA values. And then now if you click, there can be some small downside here, just like I did. If you create an RGB, for example, let's say you create yours, let's say you've done #000 and then let me say color, COLOR, color #000. I wanted to switch to a color. Let me see. If you do something like this, #000, and then it changes to a color of black, and let's say you move your mouse pointer over to the color selector and this appears, and then you click and then you get to RGB. I want the RGB itself. RGB. Mostly it comes as RGB. It comes as RGB. If it comes as RGB, you have to automatically add an additional value. This is an RGBA.